Welcome to the Travel Demand Management Overview webinar, one of the many interactive technical assistance events being offered through the PlanIt Education and Training Program to planners, consultants, elected officials, and technical staff as local governments prepare to begin comprehensive plan updates. My name is Sama Safula, an associate planner at the Metropolitan Council and your moderator today. If you are an AICP member, this event is eligible for 1 CM credit, which you must attend the entire event in order to receive. Credits for participation can be claimed by going to your CM log on the APA website. Today's event will be led by Wendy Duran. Wendy Duran brings over 25 years of travel demand management experience across the US and European markets. As a TDM program manager for the Twin Cities Metropolitan Council, she provides strategic direction and builds partnerships that support sustainable travel behavior. She began her TDM career working at Metro Transit, leading employer engagement and expanding participation in a regional transit pass program, including launching the U-Pass at the University of Minnesota. Wendy has designed and implemented award-winning TDM programs for multi-unit residential communities, commercial properties, visitor services, development, and the nation's first TDM for Schools initiative. I will now turn it over to Wendy. Thank you.
Thank you, Sama, for that nice welcome, and welcome to everyone joining us today. To give you a quick overview of what we'll be talking about regarding travel demand management, we'll have a little introduction and then certainly talk to you about what travel demand management is and also explain a bit as to what it isn't. I'll be providing what TDM is into different community contexts for you, as well as sharing some existing regional TDM programs that all of you would be available to go ahead and start plugging yourself into right away if interested, and then some opportunities on what you could do more to potentially elevate TDM that is already happening in your communities, some funding opportunities, and then certainly we'll be sharing resources throughout the presentation and have that available to you at the end as well. So, travel demand management. What is travel demand management? It's one of these things that I always want to level set at the beginning of conversations regarding what this is. And people will call travel demand management also transportation demand management. In the region, we do refer to it as travel demand management. But travel demand management are those circles that are in the middle of this slide here. So they are the strategies, programs, and incentives that create awareness of choices people can make about how they get around. So it really is about elevating and supporting existing transportation services and investments that are made within communities. The travel demand management incentives, programs, and strategies, they support the usage of transit, walking, shared mobility, van pooling, biking, flexible workplaces, which we also know as like remote work or compressed work weeks, things of that nature, as well as ride matching with carpooling. So it's about making sure people are aware of their options and how to use them and the services available, but TDM isn't necessarily the services themselves. So that's a very important distinction to make. TDM is what supports services, and so we certainly need to identify what services are available to identify how TDM could be utilized in your community. So why would you want to incorporate TDM? Why is the council asking you to document this? While TDM has many different community benefits, it's sustainable. TDM helps people use travel options that reduce costs, time, effort, and energy use. Communities benefit from less congestion and emissions, supporting long-term environmental goals. TDM is also flexible, so it's offering support for all non-single occupancy vehicle or drive-alone travel choices. So the services that we had mentioned before with transit, ride matching, and pooling, biking, walking, and remote work strategies. So it gives people the freedom to pick what works best for them for their travel choice. And flexibility makes the transportation system more resilient, especially during areas where we might have construction or if we have weather events, which is certainly something that we take into consideration in the Twin Cities here and the greater region, as well as service disruptions. TDM options make things more clear. So TDM provides easy to understand education, guidance, and information about travel choices that reduces confusion and helps people feel confident, especially if they're trying something new on how to get around. And when people understand their options, they make better choices and they're more informed. TDM is also convenient. It focuses on making sustainable travel choices easy to access. So by improving connections or simplifying trip planning and reducing barriers, people can use options without extra effort. TDM supports safer, more welcoming transportation options for all people, regardless of their age, ability, race, gender, or income, and a safer network strengthens community trust. And lastly, by improving access to jobs, TDM connects residents with more employment opportunities that supports economic development. And employers gain access to a broader talent pool when transportation barriers are reduced. So the Metropolitan Council has provided TDM support for decades, so this isn't necessarily new, but we've incorporated this for the first time in the 2050 TPP through the TDM investment plan. So the plan is based on a TDM action plan recommendation that has goals that were published in the fall of 2023. And out of the 4 goals, I'd like to highlight goal number 2, which speaks to land use policies and programs to encourage other options of travel than driving alone. So we'll be sharing more on that specific topic today. As mentioned, there are new requirements in the 2050 TPP for TDM. Every community approaches TDM a little differently. So the first step is we're asking communities to document what TDM strategies you already have in place, either intentionally, or you might identify today that you have TDM strategies in place, but you maybe are calling them something different or didn't necessarily know that they fall within TDM. So again, the requirement is to describe and document existing local travel demand management policies, ordinances, and practices if applicable. So TDM in your community might include things that you do regarding parking management strategies, or TOD, transit supportive zoning, bicycle parking requirements, or the networks you're putting in, or partnerships with the transportation management organizations that currently exist in the region. TDM can include current or planned collaboration with regional TDM partners, such as outreach campaigns that you're doing to your communities, any type of marketing you're doing regarding transportation, education surrounding transportation options, or even shared promotional efforts that encourage sustainable travel. So as you may have already identified, TDM is certainly not a fits all communities. It is truly shaped by each community's local circumstances, such as your land patterns, available service or transit that you have in the area, demographics of your community, and certainly taking into consideration your staff capacity to develop and implement TDM activities. So we want communities to really think about how TDM fits into your current existing goals. So whether they have to do with congestion relief, environmental, economic development, equity, or safety goals that you might be working with already. Some places already have formal ordinances in place that support TDM, like TDM development plans embedded in the site plan process, or you might talk about parking maximums or unbundling parking or multimodal development standards. Others may be using more informal approaches that can be documented and strengthened through this initiative. So overall, this requirement hasn't been put in place to talk about creating new mandates necessarily. It's about capturing what's already happening locally and identifying opportunities to build on existing practices, especially through regional partnerships and support that are already available. The webinar today is about what you could be documenting for the work you're doing to support TDM, but it's also about how to get beyond the current TDM requirements of purely documenting. So while referencing the local planning handbook that is available, you'll see these 4 TDM elements that are on the slide here identified as well. So I've made sure to include these throughout the presentation and provide more detail to speak to those as well. So one way to prioritize TDM strategies is through partnerships with regional transportation management organization partners. We also call them TMOs. So in the 7-county region, there are currently 4 different organizations that can partner with you on your TDM needs and provide localized outreach and education to solve transportation challenges. Their main purpose as a TMO is to help people shift how they travel, when they travel, or whether they make a trip at all. So they provide intensive outreach with a network of clients, typically including employers, multi-unit residential communities, colleges and universities, developers, and of course the general public. And they work with these groups to create programs that increase awareness of transportation options and increase usage, making sure people not only are aware, but use them. So the resources that are in the Twin Cities region right now, we have 4 different TMOs, and they all function a little differently because they have different geographic situations surrounding their work. So the first one I'll mention is Commute Solutions, which provides TDM support for the entire county of Anoka. St. Paul also has a TMO called Move Minnesota that supports TDM in their entirety of their city. Commuter Services provides TDM support along the 494 corridor with their member cities of Minnetonka, Eden Prairie, Richfield, Edina, and Bloomington. And then in the light blue, you'll see that Commuter Programs, which is underneath the Met Council umbrella, provides TDM support to the rest of the region. So all areas of the region do have transportation management organizations that they can partner with and identify opportunities to increase the amount of TDM that you are participating in and making sure are available to the populations that are your stakeholders. So furthering the concept of partnerships and how important they are to TDM impacts and results and prioritizing your TDM strategies, I'd like to also mention some other partnerships that really do make TDM work more efficiently. Cities are responsible mostly for guidance around land use and street design. So TMOs can help connect the infrastructure investments to sustain behavior change and the usage of those multimodal networks. Transit agencies are also partners that can provide core services like their bus service, right? That TDM can help with awareness and increased ridership, as well as identifying what first and last mile solutions are needed in order to potentially have transit be an option for people. TMOs typically know a lot about all the transit services in your area and are a great resource. Employers are a real traditional partner in implementing TDM strategies that assist their employees with their commutes. So these partnerships increase the reach that your work is doing, and they can customize programs that support mode shift. It's also worth noting that your city or county is an employer itself, right? And so you could also be incorporating TDM into your own city or county's employee benefits. And if your city or county employer already provides sustainable commute benefits to your employees, that could be something that you document as current TDM activities as well. Developers create environments that support multimodal choices, so they're certainly a partner that we work with as well. TMOs can help with TDM plan development and review site plans that support long-term travel behavior change. And working with property managers of multi-unit residential communities is a great way to educate residents about TDM and allow properties to reduce parking demand, expand travel options for residents, and improves property competitiveness. And lastly, nonprofits are also great partners when working on TDM initiatives. Have a few examples here with Our Car, which is a regional car share program in the Twin Cities region, as well as Bike MN, which is a statewide initiative that helps people of all ages bike more often. And they can be great resources when talking about transportation options. So we'll move next into the different community contexts where we can see TDM. So as mentioned, TDM strategies are most effective at the local level. You'll get better results if you're focusing on how your local community wants to get around. So I'll be sharing some context about what TDM strategies are typically most effective based on a community designation. So this is a really good place to start, especially if you're planning for how to implement TDM in your community. So what can TDM look like in an urban or urban edge community context. Urban and urban edge communities typically have more transportation options available, like transit or connected sidewalk networks, connected bike networks, and higher density development, which means they're positioned to take a community-wide approach to TDM. So when we say community-wide, we mean that TDM strategies aren't limited to just a single development or a specific corridor. Instead, they apply more broadly across the entire community's planning, policy, and transportation frameworks. These communities often face higher levels of congestion, parking pressure, and development activity, and because of that, they benefit from policies that manage demand at a much wider scale. Things like parking management, transit supportive zoning, or TOD, bike infrastructure requirements, or employer-based commute programs. Urban edge communities may not be as dense as a downtown core, but they still experience enough growth and travel demand that a broader TDM approach is both feasible and impactful. The goal isn't to impose a one-size-fits-all policy, as mentioned. It's best to identify the tools that align with your land use policies, your mobility goals, and available transportation options and services. But taking a community-wide perspective helps ensure TDM is coordinated across departments. So your TDM could be incorporated into planning, into your public works, and economic development. So what does TDM look like in a suburban or suburban edge community context? Well, TDM isn't only for big cities. Suburban communities have meaningful opportunities to influence travel behavior, but the strategies need to fit their land use patterns, transportation networks, and community priorities. So suburban and suburban edge communities often have a different transportation landscape than urban areas do. They typically have more auto-oriented development patterns, fewer high-frequency transit options, and longer trip distances. And that means their TDM strategies need to be tailored to those conditions. So in these areas, TDM is often effective when it focuses on managing commute patterns, working with employers, and making multimodal options more usable and attractive rather than trying to replicate dense urban style approaches. And even without extensive transit networks, suburban communities can still benefit from TDM tools like park and ride planning, carpool or vanpool promotion, bike education, and network improvements, as well as targeted employer-based programs. Suburban edge communities may be experiencing significant growth, or new development. This affords these communities with a unique opportunity to integrate TDM very early through the development site plan review process, or parking management, as well as zoning updates that supports mixed use and multimodal connections. TDM could also address local goals such as managing traffic at peak times, supporting economic development, improving more access for workers, and reducing emissions in growing corridors. And looking at our third community context, what does TDM look like in a rural community? Well, rural communities also have unique transportation needs and typically include longer travel distances, limited or no fixed route transit, and dispersed land uses. And because of that, TDM looks different here than it does in urban or suburban settings. So in rural communities, effective TDM may focus on options like carpool and vanpool programs, volunteer driver networks, demand response transit, flexible workplace support, or shared mobility partnerships that help fill specific gaps in your communities. Many rural communities already practice informal TDM, such as coordinating rides to major employers, providing event transportation, or supporting local shuttle providers. Documenting these existing practices is certainly an important first step. Rural TDM often connects directly to goals such as improving access to jobs, improving access to services or healthcare, and supporting aging populations, as well as reducing transportation cost burdens or improving safety on long-distance corridors. And because staffing and resources are often limited, partnerships are especially important, whether those are with transit agencies, regional TDM providers like TMOs, nonprofits, health organizations, or employers. So we've talked about what TDM is and what it could look like depending on the community context you're a part of. Alongside strategies that your community can identify locally, there's also a powerful set of resources already available regionally that you can plug into right away. And these are offered at the Met Council. So Metro Transit's regional MetroPass program provides unlimited all-day access to transit across the Twin Cities that includes buses, light rail, and commuter buses. So the MetroPass is designed for employers to support their employees' commute, but the added bonus is that employees are able to use this transit pass anytime they want, not just for their commute. So they can use it on evenings and weekends for appointments or other places that they're able to take transit. And to qualify, employers really need only 5 or more participating employees to enroll. So it really is a great fit for organizations of any size and any community context that does have transit serviced. So you could also identify if your community itself could enroll as an employer in the MetroPass program. Another regional program that is offered is our Metro Van Pool program. So van pooling is a highly reliable and more affordable option than owning a car for people who have long distance commutes or you have lower income populations. Metro Van Pool is a shared ride option for groups of 4 to 15 people that are traveling consistently to similar destinations. So usually it's for longer commutes. So folks that are driving 15 to 60 plus miles each day for their drive to work. Riders also are designated drivers or take turns driving. So this isn't, say, a shuttle system as much as it is 4 to 15 people who come together and determine if they are good matches to ride with each other based on where they work, as well as when they need to start and end a workday. And then they take turns driving or they designate a driver. The average van pool rider pays around $100 a month, but your community or employer partners that you have could also help subsidize the cost of these vans further. Given van pools are regional, it expands the labor pool by making jobs accessible to workers who live farther away. So van pooling can also support shift workers, people who have reverse commutes, as well as dispersed job sites where there are fewer or no other options available for people to get to work. Another regional program that we have is called the Guaranteed Ride Home program. And this service provides a reliable ride home for registered commuters who normally use non-drive alone modes at least 3 times per week. It offers a peace of mind by ensuring commuters that have a guaranteed ride home during emergencies, unexpected overtime, or sudden illness. So it's truly designed to be removing that, like, well, what if barrier about people or the concerns that people have about leaving their car at home. And that is truly a barrier that we do see when we're working with organizations or people are concerned about feeling stranded at work. So the way this works is people register for the program and then they utilize this program and get a free ride home through partnerships that we have with Lyft or Uber, which makes a real quick, flexible, and widely available way to get home in case of that emergency. The rider's trip is paid for them, and the only expense that the rider incurs would be if they want to choose to tip their driver or not. The regional TDM program also provides a common and long-standing option for people who would like to explore carpooling or vanpooling, but want to search for a person to ride with. So ride matching services are typically based on commute routes and work and start end schedules. And this ride matching service is a service that is provided by the Met Council. Users can search across the entire regional network, which increases the chance of finding a good match. The system can also be customized for individual employers, allowing employees to match specifically with coworkers only for easier consideration. So this is a simple way for communities, employers, and commuters to plug into an existing regional tool that's already built out and ready for their use. And lastly, the local planning handbook sees opportunities to integrate TDM into projects. And one way many communities could do this is to include TDM when investing in active transportation networks. So when we do this, we make it possible for people of all ages and abilities to move around easily without needing a car for every short trip. This is especially important because short trips make up a big portion of our travel, especially suburban driving. If we can shift even a small percentage of those to walking or biking, we reap all the benefits of healthier communities. And this is where the behavior change element of how TDM activities can really be impactful. The key is to use TDM strategies to shift ideas about these modes being only for recreation. So these networks can also be seen as transportation options. And it's about identifying how people can get to activity centers or running errands using these connected networks. Also, certainly worth noting is that with the increase of e-bikes, there's also the ability to increase the length of a trip and what people would consider a comfortable distance. All right, so our next section is talking about how you might be able to look at some strategies that allow you to do more in the travel demand management sphere. One very common scenario for TDM incorporation across the US has to do with development and land use strategies. So the local TDM guidebook also calls out how communities can implement development-based TDM programs. A strategy that all communities really could consider incorporating has to do with this, and a common way to do this requires TDM strategies in the early stages of a development process. So once a building is already open and ready for occupancy, it's not impossible to incorporate TDM, but it certainly makes it more difficult. So the most effective time is during the site plan review phase for new or larger redevelopment projects. Common frameworks we see within TDM plan requirements, if you're creating a framework, have to do with what type of development are we talking about. So what type of development makes the most sense to incorporate TDM requirements has to do with what you're seeing in your community. For some communities, it has to do with any development. For others, they may differentiate between having development and TDM requirements for multi-tenant residential, for commercial only buildings, or mixed use schools or others. Another way to create your framework has to do with identifying if you should have TDM requirements based on the size of the development. And many communities will look at if there's a parking requirement. Some TDM requirements are based on how many parking spaces will be part of the development, or they'll actually come up with a formula based on occupancy of that building and what kind of TDM requirements should be required for that build. Some are based on the square footage or number of units in a building as well. So there's a lot of flexibility there. And most TDM requirements having to do with development and land use have both a carrot and a stick approach. So the carrot elements assist developers with seeing the benefits of why they would want to incorporate TDM. Including TDM can help reduce parking requirements and be able to use that space for other things that may generate actual revenue. Parking, as we know, is most often the most expensive line item in a project. So this helps think about utilizing that space in a different way. Another carrot is how some communities will expedite review for projects that commit to strong TDM measures like unbundling their parking from rent or leases and having users pay only for the parking that they need, and in turn not needing to provide as much parking. The stick, if we want to call it that, of these requirements is typically a financial commitment that is tied to reporting. So for some communities, they require a fee paid to the community based on parking or occupancy, and the community will hold those funds until they receive required reporting about how they are implementing these TDM requirements and the kind of results that they're seeing. So after a period of time, the community releases these funds back to the developer, or they may keep these funds to assist the developer with reporting support. And some communities will also utilize those funds to create TDM activities that help support the neighborhoods around that building. So TMOs and the council can assist with TDM requirements and strategies, like what I've listed here on this slide. I wanted to make sure that I shared some examples locally of how this looks in certain communities. There are already communities in the region that are incorporating TDM requirements and others that don't necessarily have TDM requirements, but they require similar TDM elements during their planning or development review. So some common strategies required or requested include providing information about travel options to tenants and residents right when they're moving in, unbundling your parking or looking at what your parking reductions could look like, require employers to offer their employees discounts on transit passes that are occupying, say, commercial buildings, and then certainly providing bike amenities and information about how to get connected to those bike and walk networks in your neighborhoods. Another way to incorporate TDM for education and awareness is through branded mobility programs that communities can create to provide engaging, clear, consistent messaging around sustainable travel options. So I've shown some examples here that Minneapolis and St. Paul have created to educate and create awareness about travel options in their communities. Mobility welcome packets for new residents introduce people to their nearby transportation options right away. And we find that really important because it's when people are forming new transportation habits, which is the best time to start talking about new ways to get around. Cities can also plug into existing regional, state, and national, say, commute or travel campaigns instead of having to start everything from scratch. And certainly the TMOs and the Met Council can assist with that. And there are also incentives and discounts for biking or walking to local retail districts that help connect active transportation with economic vitality. So that middle picture here is a sticker-based program that is called Bicycle Benefits. And it's a great example of how people are in businesses are supporting folks that are biking to their establishments. So when they have the sticker on their helmet, they show it at the place of retail or restaurant, and they get a discount for biking to that place. So these type of promotions make sustainable travel more visible, certainly more community focused because they're locally promoted and rewarding, which helps shift behavior in a positive way. In the local handbook, we also include talking about planning mobility hubs. So if planning to implement mobility hubs, certainly check out the guidebook for siting and designing mobility hubs in your community, but they certainly bring a lot of different transportation options together in one place. So shared mobility includes bike share, scooter share, car share, could even incorporate ride-hailing services like Uber or Lyft. And these services help important gaps in the transportation network. So sometimes they're addressing first and last mile challenges by connecting riders to transit stations or other major corridors, but they also expand access to jobs, services, and destinations that aren't served by fixed route transit. So how does TDM support shared mobility? TDM can boost use offering incentives such as reduced memberships or travel credits. So if we're talking about car share, bike share, Uber and Lyft, sometimes you'll be able to have those memberships be at a reduced rate or provide actually like a geo-fenced area or travel credits for that usage. Employers and residential communities can promote these options directly to their users, which makes shared mobility more visible and accessible at that local level. TDM helps build partnerships between shared mobility systems and activity centers, which create stronger multimodal connections. And together, these approaches support a coordinated, reliable multimodal transportation strategy for the region. So we want to also talk about community considerations. And for residents, TDM plays a key equity role by expanding information about affordable, safe, and realistic travel choices for people who may have few options if they are unable to drive or need options beyond driving alone. TDM also provides transportation in an easy way to understand. So transportation options only work when people know that they exist, as well as if they know how to use them. So TDM supports this and community considerations by offering clear and when needed at times multilingual education and outreach so all people can make informed choices about how they travel. TDM strategies can help reduce the cost of travel and expand access to jobs. Lower income residents often face transportation costs that use a disproportionate share of their income. So TDM strategies like carpool matching, bike programs, and working with employers to reduce costs provide less expensive options to car ownership and potentially high parking expenses. And again, TMOs and the council can partner with you and work with nonprofits, community groups, and social service providers to co-create transportation programming that makes sense for every community. So moving into resources and some regional support. Wanted to touch on some opportunities for financial support. So local funding plays a crucial role in supporting transportation demand management, especially for programs that need flexible or quick turnaround resources. And if you're looking at requiring TDM in your development process, a portion of those financial commitments could help fund your TDM program, which is a model that we do see around the country. And then there's cities, counties, and nonprofits can leverage the regional solicitation as a source of funding for TDM projects. And many of these project applications are stronger when more partners are involved. So throughout the conversation today, in the chat, there's been some of these resources that have been made available. We'll have this as a one-pager, if you will, that you'll be able to reference to as well. But wanted to make sure that shared not only what was in the presentation, but there are a few trade associations that have a lot of TDM resources available as well. One is the Association for Commuter Transportation that focuses above and beyond just the commute, even though that's the name of the organization. And then the American Planning Association also has a wealth of knowledge about TDM programs as well. So that concludes the formal part of the presentation today.
And thank you, Wendy, again for a wonderful presentation. And thank you all for attending. We hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.